Hi, everybody. Hey, I'm back. It's time for chapter 3. Welcome to my book club. My name is Joan, and I have been teaching English online for about 5 years. So, what I want to do here is translate my lessons into videos that you can improve your English with. So, in the book club, we're reading Emma by Jane Austen, and we're going through one chapter a day with both vocabulary and guidance, and also some reactions because I've never read this book either. So we're reading it together, we're improving our English together, and I'm really excited to keep going today. Please, if you can do me a favor, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel, or leave me a comment here in the chat because it really does motivate me and make me feel very good if you do that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, if you're interested in studying English one-on-one with a professional English teacher, myself, or someone else, you can use the link that I'm gonna send. Oops, I didn't grab it. For Italki. Italki is a great place, great website where you can learn any language, including English. And the link that I'm sending you in the chat is, this will give you $10 off. So you can enjoy $10 off. And it also sends me $10 to take Mandarin lessons. 因为我非常喜欢学习中文。So here's that. And today we're going to begin with chapter 3. Yesterday we left off chapter 2. Not a lot happened in chapter 2. It was a lot of backstory. Backstory is the information that we need to understand the story. So in the last chapter we learned about Mr. What is his name? About Mr. Weston. So Miss Taylor's new husband, Mr. Weston, has a son who has never visited him in the village and is very interesting. Everyone is curious about his son, Frank. Now, I think I might see something coming in the future where Frank finally does come to the village and everybody gets to meet him, including Emma herself. So let's keep going with chapter 3. Mr. Woodhouse was fond of society in his own way. Fond of, right off the bat, good vocabulary. Fond of means that he likes it. Like I am fond of coffee, perhaps too fond of coffee. So fond of society, fond of social interaction and talking with people. So he's fond of society in his own way. He liked very much to have his friends come and see him, and from various united causes, from his long residence at Hartfield and his good nature, from his fortune, his house, his daughter, he could command the visits of his own little circle in a great measure as he liked. Okay. Command the visits. This means that he was making the plan. People would come to visit him. So he is well-liked and well-educated enough that people will come to his house. Sounds like he doesn't like going anywhere else. I got to be honest, this is just like me and my husband. Oh yeah, you can come over. But our friends invite us. We're like, we'll go, sure. Okay. He had not much intercourse with any families beyond that circle. Remember this word intercourse? In this book, it's going to mean conversation or connection, discussion. Don't use this word in modern life. Intercourse today means sex. So he had not much conversation with any families beyond that circle. His horror of late hours and large dinner parties made him unfit for any acquaintance but such as would visit him on his own terms. On his own terms. So he decides he's horrified by late nights and large dinner parties. Probably doesn't go clubbing very much. Fortunately for him, Highbury, including Randalls in the same parish, and Donwell Abbey in the parish adjoining. Oh, Donwell Abbey. Sounds like Downton Abbey. Parish is the county or the area. So it's not like a state, like it's not like Texas or California. It's like one small area of a state. And Donwell Abbey in the parish adjoining, the seat of Mr. Knightley, comprehended many such. Okay, so everyone knew that everyone comprehended this, that these were the closest places. Not unfrequently, okay, so not unfrequently, we have a double negative again. So this is frequently. Not unfrequently, through Emma's persuasion, he had some of the chosen and the best to dine with him. But evening parties were what he preferred, and unless he fancied himself at any time unequal to company, there was scarcely an evening in the week in which Emma could not make up a card table for him. So unless he thought he was unequal to the company or better than them, they're not good enough for me, then every night Emma could make up a card table. Here, this means get enough people to play cards. So maybe you need 4 people or 6 people at the house. Real long-standing regard brought the Westons and Mr. Knightley, and by Mr. Elton, a young man living alone without liking it, the privilege of exchanging any vacant evening of his own blank solitude for the elegancies and society of Mr. Woodhouse's drawing room. Okay. And the smiles of his lovely daughter was in no danger of being thrown away. So the privilege of exchanging any vacant evening, this is any night they want to, they can exchange a boring night at home or a fun evening at Mr. Woodhouse's with Emma. She seems entertaining. After these came a second set, among the most come-at-able of whom... Okay, I've never heard this word, come-at-able, but here it's come at would be approachable, like the easiest to talk to. Among the most come-at-able of whom were Mrs. and Miss Bates and Mrs. Goddard, 3 ladies almost always at the service of an invitation from Hartfield. Okay, so here we have 2 women, Mrs. Bates and Miss Bates. Mrs. Bates is probably the mother, and Miss Bates is the daughter. Now remember, Miss is an unmarried woman. Mrs. it means she is married, and usually she'll have her husband's name. At the service of an invitation from Hartfield, and who were fetched and carried home so often that Mr. Woodhouse thought it no hardship for either James or the horses. So James is their driver, remember? So they had picked them up, these women, Mrs. Bates, Miss Bates, and Mrs. Goddard, come over so often that it's just easy. Like, oh, she's coming again. You don't worry about asking James. He will do it, no problem. Had it taken place only once a year, it would have been a grievance. So it would have been difficult if they did it once a year, but every night gets easier. Good. Mrs. Bates, the widow of a former vicar, a former vicar of Highbury. Vicar is like, I believe it's a religious guy, like a priest, but not exactly a priest. Huh. Was a very old lady, almost past everything but tea and quadrille. So the only thing she can do is drink tea and play some easy games. I've heard this word quadrille before, but I don't remember exactly what it is. Ah, I forgot to put my phone in airplane mode, so it's ringing. Woo! Let's fix that. Yeah. Okay. So this Mrs. Bates is very old. She's a widow. Widow means her husband died. She lived with her single daughter in a very small way. Small way. Not much money, not doing too much. And was considered with all the regard and respect which a harmless old lady under such untoward circumstances can excite. So she was respected, she's harmless. Such untoward circumstances is like she's not very rich or very ambitious. She's just retired. She's just an old lady. Her daughter enjoyed a most uncommon degree of popularity for a woman neither young, handsome, rich, nor married. So she's Miss Bates, the younger, is not that beautiful, but she's really popular. Cool. Miss Bates stood in the very worst predicament in the world for having much of the public favor and had no intellectual superiority to make atonement to herself or frighten those who might hate her into outward respect. So, the very worst predicament, the very worst situation, because she has lots of public favor, lots of people like her, but she isn't smart enough to really um, impress these people, I guess. She had never boasted either beauty or cleverness. So she's not very beautiful. She's not very smart. But everybody hangs out with her. She sounds cool. Her youth had passed without distinction, and her middle of life was devoted to the caring of a failing mother and the endeavor to make a small income go as far as possible. So her middle ages were devoted. She took care of. She was 100% focused on her mother, on taking care of her mother and living on just a little bit of money, trying to live without much money. Oh. And yet she was a happy woman and a woman whom no one named without goodwill. It was her own universal goodwill and contented temper which worked such wonders. So, goodwill is the nice things, the good things she does, and contented temper, she's very happy, she's very content, she's satisfied with everything and easy to please. She loved everybody and was interested in everybody's happiness, quick-sighted to everybody's merits, and thought herself a most fortunate creature, surrounded with blessings in such an excellent mother and so many good neighbors and friends, and a home that wanted for nothing, a home that needed nothing. They didn't need anything. They have enough. And she, even though she's not married, she's not beautiful, she's not smart, she's very happy with everything. She's very grateful for what she has. The simplicity and cheerfulness of her nature, her contented and grateful spirit, were a recommendation to everybody and a mine of felicity to herself. Felicity means like joy and happiness and staying happy. She was a great talker upon little matters, which exactly suited Mr. Woodhouse, full of trivial communications and harmless gossip. Trivial means it's not important. So trivial things. Oh, did you hear that? Miss Woodhouse got a new haircut. Oh, that's trivial, just little things. And harmless gossip. Gossip. Who is marrying who? Who did what? And harmless gossip means she's not saying bad stuff. She's just saying nice things about people. Mrs. Goddard was the mistress of a school, not of a seminary or an establishment or anything which professed in long sentences of refined nonsense to combine liberal acquirements with elegant morality upon new principles and new systems. I've got a very long sentence. Hang in there. And where young ladies for enormous pay might be screwed out of health and into vanity, but a real, honest, old-fashioned boarding school, where a reasonable quantity of accomplishments were sold at a reasonable price, and where girls might be sent out of the way and scramble themselves into a little education without any danger of coming back prodigies. Okay. Super long sentence. To summarize it, she has a boarding school for girls where they can be educated but not be too smart. Because at this time, women were expected to be a little bit less educated, a lot less intelligent than men. Lame. So Mrs. Goddard has a school that doesn't teach them, as she said, long sentences of refined nonsense. It's not too fancy. It's not very refined. So this is not a school for rich girls. Okay. And so at the end, so they can scramble themselves. Scramble is like to move quickly, like an animal often scrambles into its hole or into its house. We also scramble eggs, mix them up like that. So women could go there, they could get a little bit of education, but not come back prodigies, not come back geniuses, very smart, because smart women don't find husbands. I did. Mrs. Goddard's school was in high repute. That means everyone liked it. High reputation. And very deservedly, for Highbury was reckoned a particularly healthy spot. She had ample house and garden. So she had plenty of room, ample house and garden, gave the children plenty of wholesome food, let them run about a great deal in the summer, and in winter dressed their chilblains with her own hands. I don't know the word chilblains. Never heard this word. But what this means is she gave them plenty of space. It was a very nice place. They got to play outside in the summer, and she dressed them warmly in the winter. So she would put on their scarves, their hats, their gloves. By the way, I finished knitting this today. What do you think? I finally have it off the needles with just a little bit of yarn left over. So I think Miss Goddard would approve of my scarf. It was no wonder that a train of 20 young couple now walked after her to church. She was a plain, motherly kind of woman who had worked hard in her youth and now thought herself entitled to the occasional holiday of a tea visit. So she has lots of people who regard her as a mother. They go to church with her and they think of her as their mother. So now she thought herself entitled to the occasional holiday of a tea visit. Oh, let's have some tea. It's so British. Mm. And having formerly owed much to Mr. Woodhouse's kindness, felt his particular claim on her to leave her neat parlor hung round with fancy work whenever she could, and win or lose a few sixpences by his fireside. So she will leave for Mr. Woodhouse. She will leave her own nice house to go to his nice house and lose some money playing backgammon or playing cards. Sixpences is just a small form of British money. I don't know exactly how much a pence is. These were the ladies whom Emma found herself very frequently able to collect, and happy was she, for her father's sake, in the power, though as far as she was herself concerned, it was no remedy for the absence of Mrs. Weston. So Emma can get lots of women to come over to the house, but it's still not Mrs. Weston. Miss Taylor, remember? Miss Taylor got married and became Mrs. Weston, and Emma misses her so much. She was delighted to see her father look comfortable and very much pleased with herself for contriving things so well, arranging, organizing things so well. But the quiet prosings of three such women made her feel that every evening so spent was indeed one of the long evenings she had fearfully anticipated. So these women are too quiet. She still misses Mrs. Weston. Mrs. Weston. English is hard. She still longs for her friend. She wishes her friend were here. As she sat one morning looking forward to exactly such a close of the present day, such a close of the present day. So looking forward to the night ending that way. A note was brought from Mrs. Goddard requesting, in most respectful terms, to be allowed to bring Miss Smith with her. Okay, so she wrote a note asking to bring Miss Smith along. She's asking for a +1, asking for if she can bring a friend. A most welcome request, for Miss Smith was a girl of 17, whom Emma knew very well by sight, and had long felt an interest in on account of her beauty. A very gracious invitation was returned, and the evening no longer dreaded by the fair mistress of the mansion. Fair means beautiful here. So Emma, the beautiful mistress of the mansion, the queen of the castle, was not looking forward to spending another night with old ladies. Old ladies, boring. And so now a 17-year-old girl who's super beautiful is coming over. That's awesome. Harriet Smith was the natural daughter of somebody. Somebody had placed her several years back at Mrs. Goddard's school, and somebody had lately raised her from the condition of scholar to that of parlor boarder. Okay. So I'm guessing a parlor boarder is like the person who lives there but isn't a student. So whoever her parents are paying for her school and paying for her to live. But we don't know yet if it's her parents. Because this was all that was generally known of her history. She had no visible friends, but what had been acquired at Highbury, and was now just returned from a long visit in the country to some young ladies who had been at school with her. So nobody knows anything about Miss Smith. She was a very pretty girl, and her beauty happened to be a sort which Emma particularly admired. Emma admired her type of beauty very, very much, particularly, especially. She was short, plump, and fair, with a fine bloom, blue eyes, light hair, regular features, and a look of great sweetness. And before the end of the evening, Emma was as much pleased with her manners as her person, and quite determined to continue the acquaintance. Determined, she's made up her mind to continue being friends or continue being acquaintances. In this description of her, we've got short, plump. Plump is like fat, but not fat. Plump is like cute fat, very cute. And fair with a fine bloom, so her cheeks were kind of rosy. We don't say this anymore. This is old-fashioned. Blue eyes, light hair. Regular features here means everything is the same size. Everything is where it's supposed to be and not too close together or too far apart. So Emma wants to be friends with her. She was not struck by anything remarkably clever in Miss Smith's conversation, but she found her altogether very engaging. Not inconveniently shy, not unwilling to talk, and yet so far from pushing, showing so proper and becoming a difference. So she's very willing to talk, very easy to talk to, but she's not pushing people in conversation. She's not very challenging to talk to. Seeming so pleasantly grateful for being admitted to Hartfield, and so artlessly impressed by the appearance of everything in so superior a style to what she had been used to, that she must have good sense and deserve encouragement. So she was artfully impressed by everything that was better, superior than what she was used to. This is me. This is me when I go to a rich person's house. I'm like, oh my God, these wine glasses are so beautiful. Wow. At my house, I just drink out of a jar. I would be exactly like this, so impressed by rich people. Encouragement should be given. She should be supported. We should like her. Mhm. Those soft blue eyes and all those natural graces should not be wasted on the inferior society of Highbury and its connections. The inferior society, Highbury is lower class, maybe some poor people, maybe some uneducated people. Basically, she deserves to be in a big city, somewhere nicer than this little town. Mm-mm. The acquaintance she had already formed were unworthy of her. So no one is good enough for her. They all suck. She's better. The friends from whom she had just parted, though very good sort of people, must be doing her harm. They were a family of the name of Martin, whom Emma well knew by character as renting a large farm of Mr. Knightley and residing in the parish of Donwell. Very creditably, she believed. She knew Mr. Knightley thought highly of them. Okay. So this Martin family, they rent a farm. That's significant at this time that they don't own the farm. They just rent it. Maybe it's still significant now. I don't know. But not as good as owning a farm. Mhm. She knew Mr. Knightley thought highly of them, but they must be coarse and unpolished and very unfit to be the intimates, close friends, of a girl who wanted only a little more knowledge and elegance to be quite perfect. So she's saying Miss Smith just is almost perfect. She just needs to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more elegant, a little bit more graceful. And then she would be the perfect woman. She would notice her. She would improve her. Oh, Emma. Emma's scheming. Emma's making a plan. She would notice her. She would improve her. She would detach her from her bad acquaintance and introduce her into good society. She would form her opinions and her manners. It would be an interesting and certainly a very kind undertaking, highly becoming her own situation in life, her leisure and powers. Becoming. Becoming is an old-fashioned word that means it suits her. 合适她. Like it's very suitable for her. It's very good for her. So Emma has this idea that she will transform Miss Smith, form her opinions and manners, and make her more interesting. She was so busy in admiring those soft blue eyes, in talking and listening, and forming all these schemes in the in-betweens, that the evening flew away at a very unusual rate. And the supper table, which always closed such parties, and for which she had been used to sit and watch the due time, was all set out and ready and moved forwards to the fire before she was aware. So the evening flew by super fast. Normally, the supper table closes such parties. So here this means the table, I guess they move the table towards the fire to hang out. And that's normally Emma's waiting and waiting and waiting. Okay, we're moving the table. I'm done. But tonight it flew by and everything happened before she could even notice. She's so interested. Miss Smith and her blue eyes. Sounds like she's kind of in love with her. I don't know. With an alacrity. I don't know this word. Alacrity. Alacrity. Definition, brisk and cheerfulness. In a very brisk and cheerful way. Sorry. With an alacrity beyond the common impulse of a spirit, which yet was never indifferent to the credit of doing everything well and attentively. With the real goodwill of a mind delighted with its own ideas, did she then do all the honors of the meal, and help and recommended the minced chicken and scalloped oysters with an urgency which she knew would be acceptable to the early hours and civil scruples of their guests. So Emma is trying to do everything really well, be really attentive. Attentive is like helping them a lot. A waitress should be attentive to us at a restaurant. Hey, do you need anything? Do you need any more water? Would you like any more food? So Emma's being very, very good tonight. Upon such occasions, poor Mr. Woodhouse's feelings were in sad warfare. He loved to have the cloth laid because it had been the fashion of his youth, But his conviction of suppers being very unwholesome made him rather sorry to see anything put on it. And while his hospitality would have welcomed his visitors to everything, his care for their health made him grieve that they would eat. Sounds like Mr. Woodhouse doesn't like supper. It sounds like he doesn't like any food. So he's saying that it's unhealthy to eat food. It's probably unhealthy to eat food at night. Sounds like this is happening a little too late or something. Such another small basin of thin gruel as his own was all that he could, with thorough self approbation, recommend, though he might constrain himself while the ladies were comfortably clearing the nicer things to say. Okay. So a small basin is like a bowl. He has a small bowl of thin gruel. Gruel is like a liquid soup made of grain. Um, in China, there's like the rice stuff. Joe is like gruel. It's rice gruel. It's so this is probably something with boiled rice or boiled oats, like very, very boring food. And that's all he can eat. Sounds boring. So he would say, Mrs. Bates, let me propose your venturing on one of these eggs. An egg boiled very soft is not unwholesome. Cyril understands boiling an egg better than anybody. I would not recommend an egg boiled by anybody else, but you need not be afraid. They are very small, you see. One of our small eggs will not hurt you. Miss Bates, let Emma help you to a little bit of tart. A very little bit. Ours are all apple tarts. You need not to be afraid of unwholesome preserves here. Unwholesome is the opposite of wholesome. Wholesome means healthy. Unwholesome means unhealthy. So he's saying, don't be afraid. There's not a lot of sugar in these. Our eggs are really good. But then he says, I do not advise the custard. So custard, like a pudding, I guess he's just worried about these women getting fat. I don't know. I do not advise the custard. Mrs. Goddard, what say you to half a glass of wine? A small half glass, put into a tumbler of water. I do not think it could disagree with you. So he's really worried about people eating and drinking. Sounds like someone who can't eat or drink anything. Emma allowed her father to talk, but supplied her visitors in a much more satisfactory style. So she gets them the food. And on the present evening had particular pleasure in sending them away happy. The happiness of Miss Smith was quite equal to her intentions. Good. So Miss Smith was just as happy as Emma wanted her to be. Miss Woodhouse was so great a personage in Highbury that the prospect of the introduction had given as much panic as pleasure, but the humble, grateful little girl went off with highly gratified feelings. So this is saying Miss Smith was very nervous to meet Emma. She was really worried because Emma is so important and so famous in this town. But she went off with highly gratified feelings, delighted with the affability, the niceness with which Miss Woodhouse had treated her all the evening, and actually shaken hands with her at last. Wow, yay! So Emma treated her really well and shook hands with her at the end. which seems to be a big deal. So in that time, this must be very important. And now Miss Smith feels like she is welcome at Miss Woodhouse's house, at Emma's house. So sounds like Miss Harriet Smith and Miss Emma Woodhouse are about to become good friends, or perhaps Emma is trying to make a match. I don't know. I haven't read this either. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get started tomorrow with chapter 4. That's the end of chapter 3. So if you have any questions at all, go ahead and write them in the comments and I'll reply to them. And also, yeah, like my videos, subscribe to my channel. If you have an opinion about what time you would like the live broadcast to be, let me know, because next week I will set a time and it will be the same every day. Cool, cool, cool. All right, thanks so much. I'll see you in chapter 4. Goodbye.